Okay, so we are in quarter two, week 7, and this week we are going to learn 3 concepts. One of them will be used in the other 2. So the first concept that gets used throughout all concepts this week is interval notation. So the way you used to write intervals before was something like x is greater than 5, or you might have seen like 2 is greater than x is greater than 8. Okay, so that was before. But now that we are in secondary 2, we want to change the way we write this answers or these intervals, and we don't need to use the variables. So what happens is we use what's called interval notation. So interval notation always uses x values. So that's just understood by the notation. Now, it's going to look like an ordered pair, but based on the kind of answer that we will be writing, you know it's not an ordered pair, it's an interval. So the parts of the interval notation, we start with a parenthesis, and the left endpoint or the lowest number or your start, there's lots of different words we can use to describe it. We put first, then we put a comma, and then we always have a stopping point or a right endpoint or the high number. Okay, now I don't want you to get hung up on parentheses and brackets, so for this week and probably the rest of this class, we're going to just use 2 parentheses, okay? So, like I said, your answers will look like ordered pairs, but they're not. Now, there are instances where the brackets and parentheses do make a difference, but for the 2 topics we talk about this week, it actually does not, okay? So now, instead of saying like x is greater than 5, we would write 5, and then we want to go to infinity because we're going to keep getting bigger. Or from 2 to 8, we write that as 2 comma 8. Okay, so before you had the inequalities, and now we just see them as 2 numbers separated with a comma, but they mean the same thing. So let's practice with some concepts. So the first concept we want to talk about is increasing and decreasing intervals. So the rule is we always read a graph from left to right. That way we all see the same patterns, okay? So that means we're going to look over here, and this is where we start looking at the graph, okay? Because if we look backwards, our answers would change, so we all have to have the same ideas. Now, the x values are on the axis. So even though your graph stops at 5, these arrows means it's going to keep going. This is just a snapshot. So I like to remind myself that positive infinity, because these are positives on the right, and negative infinity for x is on the left. Not really 5, because we keep going in both directions, okay? So as we start on the left, act like you're kind of walking up this graph. And so we'd be walking up the mountain or the hill. And so we would kind of stop right here. Last week we called that a max, okay? Now, because we increased, we are going to label that as increasing. And let's practice writing how the intervals would look. So on the left, or where we started on the x, we were at negative infinity. And then where did we stop? We stopped right here, which if we go back to the x-axis, that's at negative 2. So for all x's that are less than negative 2, so negative infinity to negative 2, my start and my stop, my graph increased. We went up. The y values got bigger. Then let's go back to the graph. So we're right here, and then we're going to start walking, and we're walking down the hill. So our graph is decreasing, and it looks like we stop right here. Last week we identified that as a minimum. So for decreasing, we started at negative 2, because we started right here at the top of the hill, which is x is negative 2. And where did we stop? We stopped right here at the min, which is positive 2. So see how my answers are the x values on the x-axis. So you look at the graph, but you will always want to go back to the x-axis. All right, and then we have one part left of this graph. So now I'm here, and I'm going to walk uphill forever. So my graph would be increasing. So we started at 2, And we never stopped, but the right side to show that we never stop is positive infinity. Okay, so for this graph, there were 2 intervals that increased and 1 interval that decreased. So see how these look like ordered pairs, but they're intervals. So let's do another one. All right, so we have this curve. So even though there aren't arrows here, they are understood, they just got cut off. So as a reminder, it's just a little snapshot from -2 to +2, but I know x is negative infinity on the left and positive infinity on the right. So let's do increasing and decreasing intervals, okay? So remember, we always start on the left of the graph. So we're gonna start and we're walking down. So I know that we are decreasing on this purple curve. And it looks like we stop right here. Now we don't have to label that as a min or a max, just so you know, so I won't. So it looked like, where did we start? So remember, we have start or the left, however you want to think of it. Well, we started on the left, which is negative infinity on the axis. And then where did we stop, or what is the right? So we stopped right here, which is 0 for x. Okay? So then we'll keep walking along the green part, and we're going uphill, so that means we are increasing and we keep increasing. Oh, I did it again. I reversed it. I keep doing this. So let's put, oops, we'll get back there. All right, so we decreased. I can just change those words. Oops, don't know why that erased. And increase. So then we increased, we started at 0. And we're going to keep going forever, which is positive infinity. So start, stop, left, right, low, high, however you want to think of those words. Okay? All right, let's try one more. So once again, the arrows are here. I'm going to put negative infinity, my arrow, and positive infinity. So increasing and decreasing. You don't have to put increasing first. I just always do. Sometimes, as you saw, I have to switch it. So we're going to start on the left, and it looks like we are decreasing all the way up until right here. So I started decreasing at negative infinity, and I stopped at -3. Okay. So then we're going to start walking again. So we started at -3, and it looks like we're going uphill. So we are increasing all the way to right here, which is at 0. So we started increasing at -3, and we stopped at 0. All right, and it looks like I have one part. So we're walking downhill. So now we are decreasing forever. So we started at 0, and we kept going forever. Remember, it's x though, so positive infinity. Now, what you'll notice is wherever I stopped, that means I had to start on the other type, okay? So you'll see a lot of the same numbers, and it just matters which order they're in, okay? All right, let's try the second topic. So the second topic, the graphs are going to look the same, but we're looking for something different. We want to know the intervals where the graph is positive and where the graph is negative. So positive, we're referring to the y values. So positive means that my graph is above the x-axis, and negative below the x-axis, okay? We're still going to use interval notation, so x's are what we're focusing on for our answer, okay? So let's look at our first example. So this one's done because I want you to see what it would look like. So we have this curve, and once again, we always start on the left. So because we want to know positive and negative, I know it's positive on the yellow, because that's above the axis, so we have this line drawn. and I know it's negative where the pink is. So it looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4 regions, so there should be 4 intervals for the answer. So for the negative, I'll start here. Remember, we're at negative infinity, and then this is my axis, so we're at 0, -1, -2, +1, 2, 3, 4. So we're negative we started at negative infinity, and we stopped right here at -1. So there we go. Then our graph is above the x-axis. We started at -1, and we stopped at +1. Then our graph went below, so we started at +1, and we stopped at 3. And then our graph was above the x-axis. We started at 3, and we went forever, which is infinity. Okay? So depending on the curve, depends on how many intervals that you will have. All right, so let's try these 2 examples. Okay? So once again, because I know I'm doing positive and negative, I automatically try to draw that line, and then I label positive and negative. So this one has 3 regions. So we should have 3 ordered pairs. So positive and negative. So I'm going to put negative infinity. This is -1, -2, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then infinity. So let's just start on the left. So I know I'm going to start negative, so negative infinity, and then we stop when we get right here, which is 1. Okay. And then we're positive. We started at 1, and then it looks like we keep going until we get to 4. And then we were below the axis, so negative. We started at 4, and then we kept going, which is infinity. So 1, 2, 3 regions. All right, let's look at the last graph. So on this one, once again, I would label, we've got, here's my barrier. We've got negative, positive, negative. Okay? So negative infinity and a positive infinity. Since my x-axis is already labeled with numbers, I'll put 0 here. So we've got positive, looks like there's 1, and then negative, this one happens to have 2 as well. So you can do them in any order. I can do my positive first if we like. So we start positive at -2, and we stopped at 3. So I know I'm going to use -2 and 3 on my negative intervals because remember we use those same numbers. So negative, we started on the left, and then we stopped at -2. That one's done. And then this negative region, we started at 3, and then we kept going on the right, which is infinity.